Hi, welcome back to the RDK tutorial series. This video is part 2, where I'll walk you through some of the basic steps needed to set up your software environment to work with the RDK. We'll go through the steps separately on Linux, macOS, and Windows, but it's essentially the same process for each, so feel free to take a look at the chapters of this video and skip ahead and just watch the part that applies to you. Also, I should mention up front that if you know that you only want to use Python with the RDK, you actually don't need to go through this process. You only need to make sure that you have either Python 3.8 or 3.10 installed, and then you can move on to the next video. We won't cover the process for downloading and installing Python as it's relatively straightforward, but there are some helpful tips in the manual that can be found on the RDK website. And there's lots of other resources online to help you get started with Python. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first we'll go through the setup process for Linux. We're starting off here with a clean installation of Ubuntu 20.04. So we need to install 3 key software packages at this point in order to be able to compile and install the RDK library. Namely, these are the compiler, CMake, and Git. So to do this, I'll go ahead and open up a new terminal window. And then I'll type sudo apt update to update the package source list. Next, we can go ahead and install all 3 packages at the same time by typing sudo apt install and then the names of each package that we want to install, which in our case is build essential, which includes the compiler that we want, and then CMake and Git. So I'll wait for a minute for this to finish installing. And finally, we can confirm that these packages have been installed successfully by checking the version of each package. So first I'll type gcc -- version to check which version of the compiler was installed. Then similarly I'll type cmake -- version and git -- version. So the default version of each of these packages should work fine with the RDK library. We just wanted to make sure that we have version information to verify that the installation was successful. So at this point, if you're using a Linux system, you're ready to move on to compiling and installing the RDK library, which we'll cover in the next video. Next, we'll go through the setup process for macOS. So we're starting off here with a clean installation of macOS Monterey. And just like in the Linux process, we will need to install the compiler, CMake, and Git. But now, using a Mac, we can actually install the compiler and Git as part of Apple's command line tools package. So first we'll open up a new terminal window, and then we'll type xcode select -- install. And this command will invoke the installer for the Xcode command line tools package. And then we can click install, and then agree. And the installation process here can take some time, so while we're waiting, we'll actually go ahead and also download and install CMake. So to do this, I'll open up a web browser and go to cmake.org/download. And then in the downloads page, I want to scroll down and find the section that says macOS 10.13 or later here. And I want to download this DMG file on the right-hand side, so I can click on that to download it. In my case, I've actually already downloaded version 3.24.0, so for now, we'll just go ahead and install that. So to do so, I'll go ahead and double click on the DMG file here, and then when prompted, I will find CMake and drag it into the applications folder. And then after waiting a few seconds, I can go ahead and open up Launchpad, and then find CMake over here on the right and open it, and click open. And now what I want to do here is enable CMake to be used from the terminal. So in order to do this, I can click on the Tools menu at the top of the screen and then click How to install for command line use. So now we'll be presented with 3 options for how to enable CMake to be used at the terminal. I'd recommend the second option, so we can actually go ahead and select this entire line here. And then we will copy it and open up a new terminal window. And then in the new terminal window here, we can paste it and then hit enter and type our password when prompted. Alright, so now we can see here that the symbolic links for CMake have been saved to the user local bin folder. So at this point we should be able to use CMake from the terminal, but I'll just go ahead and run a quick test of that by typing CMake --version. Alright, and here we can see that CMake has been successfully installed. So now we just need to wait for the command line tools package to finish installing. So now the command line tools should have been successfully installed, and we can quickly verify this. So first, we will check that the compiler installed successfully by typing gcc --version at the terminal. And here I can see that it is successfully installed. And then we can do the same thing for Git by typing git --version. And we can see that that has been successful as well. So together with CMake, these are all the essential packages that we need in order to compile and install the RDK library. So at this point, if you're using a Mac, you're ready to go ahead and move on to the next video. Alright, next we'll go through the setup process for Windows. So we're starting off here with a clean installation of Windows 10. And now, just as in the Linux and Mac setup processes, we'll need to install 3 key software packages in order to compile and install the RDK later on. Namely, that's the compiler, CMake, and Git. In this case, installing the compiler will take some time, so we'll start with CMake and Git. So first, we'll go to the downloads page at cmake.org, and then we want to download version 3.24. So we'll go ahead and scroll down and click the first link under older releases, then scroll down again and find version 3.24, the folder right here, and scroll down one more time, and we will find the version 3.24.0 Windows MSI installer. And we can click the link here to download CMake. I've actually already done this, so we can go ahead and just double click the link in the downloads folder to run the installer. I'm going to accept the terms, and then when prompted, add CMake to the system path for all users. This will enable us to use CMake from the command line, which we will do in the next video. From here, we can just go ahead and click next a few more times, and click install, and click yes. And then while that's installing, we can go ahead and download Git. So to do this, we will want to find the download for Windows page on the Git website. And then you can just click the link at the top that says click here to download. In my case, I've actually already downloaded it, so I'll just wait for CMake to finish installing, and then we can go ahead and run the Git installer as well. So I can click finish after the CMake installation completes, then double click Git in the downloads folder and click yes, and click next a couple of times. And we can keep the defaults here when prompted, and then we can pretty much just go ahead and leave the defaults throughout. Actually, it should all work fine. So I'll just click next a number of times all the way through. And then at the end, I will hit install. All right. So the Git installer is also going to install a bash emulator called Git Bash, which will allow us to run bash scripts within Windows, even though Windows is not a Unix-based system. And I'll show you this in just a minute once this installation completes. All right, now the installation is completed, so we can click Finish to close the window. And then to launch the bash emulator, we can go hit the Start menu icon and then find Git Bash up here at the top and click on that. And you'll see that we get a new terminal window here where we can run bash commands, which will be useful in the next video. All right, lastly, we need the compiler, which we can get as a part of Visual Studio Tools. So for this, we can just go ahead and open the downloads page for Visual Studio. And any version newer than 2015 will work here. So just go ahead and download Visual Studio. I've already downloaded the installer, so we can go ahead and double click on it here to begin the process. Click yes. Alright, when given the choice of installation options, you can go ahead and uncheck everything that's selected here by default. And then scroll down, and we want to check the box for desktop development with C++. And then here on the right hand side, we can see that the Windows 11 SDK is selected by default, but we're using Windows 10 in this tutorial, so we want to uncheck that and scroll down and find the latest version of the Windows 10 SDK and check the box for that one instead. And then we can come back up to the top and we can leave everything else the way that it is. Double check that MSVC is selected. Here we're using version 143. This includes the compiler that we need. So you can leave everything else the way that it is and we can hit install and just go ahead and begin the installation. This process will take a while, so at this point we'll skip ahead and wait for this to complete. Alright, when the installation finishes, Visual Studio will try to launch automatically. We can just close it and we can see here in the installer window that the installation was successful. The compiler executable that we've installed is called cl.exe, and at this point it can only be invoked from the developer command prompt. So we're going to add it to the system path so that we can also invoke it from other terminals like git bash or the regular Windows command prompt. So to do this, I'll open the start menu, and then we want to find developer command prompt for VS 2022. Once I have the terminal open, I can first just type cl.exe to check that the compiler is installed as expected. And here I can see the command is recognized, so we should be good to go. Then I will type next where space cl.exe, and this will give me the full path of that compiler executable. So I'm going to select this full path up to but not including cl.exe, and I'll hit just Ctrl+C to copy it. And then once I've got that copied, from the start menu, I want to open up the environment variable settings. So I will search for environment variables, edit the system, environment variables, and then here I'll click environment variables. And then under system variables, I will select path and hit edit. And then in a new entry here, we'll hit new and then paste the copied path. And don't delete or change anything that's here. That's important. Just add the new path. Then we'll click OK to save, click OK again. And now that we've added the path for the compiler executable to the system path, we should be able to invoke it from other terminals as well, this command. So we'll check that by opening up git bash first and typing cl.exe as before. And then from the output here, we can see that the command is recognized. And then similarly, we can open up just the normal command prompt, type cl.exe, and verify that we can indeed invoke it there as well. Alright, hopefully this video has helped you get your software environment set up for using the RDK. Feel free to leave a comment or reach out directly if you have any questions. And in the next video, we will move on to compiling and installing the RDK library itself.